Before we start, it's worth noting that we've examined peer-reviewed studies which don't support metaphysical claims about crystals and tarot cards. However, having said that, the research does highlight their symbolic power and potential to support self-reflection, emotional insight, and personal meaning making. Hi, Colleen. How are you today?
Hi. Hi, good. Nice to meet you, Kathy.
Nice to meet you too. Okay. So I'm here today with Colleen McMann, and we're really happy that you're here. Thanks for being here. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, Kathy. Thank you for having me. Well, I have a really wild background. I used to work in high fashion in New York City, and my life took a crazy turn, and I ended up starting a brand called Style Rituals, where I align the energetic and visual bodies of my clients. And I'm here today to really talk to you and your audience about the idea of energetic hygiene because it's one of my favorite things to share.
Very good. And you've got a story behind that?
I do have a story with many twists and turns and having to jump down the mystical rabbit hole and have a little bit of a dark night of the soul to get on the other side.
So what is energetic hygiene?
Energetic hygiene to me is really this idea that we all want to take care of ourselves mentally, physically, emotionally, right? We're eating the right foods, sleeping right, taking vitamins, we're going to traditional therapy, right? Everybody's trying to do the best they can. And I've just kind of noticed over the years that one thing that's kind of missing is the energetic component of taking care of yourself. So, energetic hygiene to me is working with your energy field to keep your energy maintained and in a good place, just like you would your body and your mind.
What are the top ways that practitioners and health coaches can start their energetic hygiene journey and to help their clients start theirs?
Oh gosh, that's a long list for me. It's I've been doing this energy work professionally for 10 years now, and I found it really interesting that a lot of my clients are healthcare professionals, right? Nurses, doctors, um, hospice people, grief workers, therapists, and they were coming to me and telling me that, although they love their work, right, and they're great at their work, passionate, that they would feel incredibly drained at the end of the day, the week, or being with a particular client or in a certain situation. And I started to make suggestions to them on ways that they could tinker with their energy. And some ways that I could start to talk to healthcare professionals specifically about this is for them to think about anytime you interact with someone, whether it's a coworker or whether it's a client that you're helping on their healing journey, that your interaction is causing you to exchange energy. And we can be like lint rollers where we walk into the room and pick up everybody's fuzz. And so it's really important that when you come home at the end of the day or your shift or when you're done seeing clients, to let go of all that. And one incredibly simple way when you come in the door is to take off your clothes that you wore all day at work because you know everything carries energy, right? The objects in our space, the cars that we drive, the house that we live in, the possessions in our home. So taking off clothes that you wore all day and putting them into the washing machine or the clothes hamper is like an incredibly easy way. The next thing I would tell you is that before you go to bed, you want the practice of calling all your energy back to you. And that is simply whether you say that out loud or to yourself, or maybe there's a particular person that you have in mind that day. Maybe it's a colleague that you don't see eye to eye with, right? Or maybe it's that client that comes in that's always like your toughest case, right? Everybody has one of those, that you might name that person and you say, I call all my energy back from person A, right? And take a big, deep breath and release while you're visualizing standing in your power and pulling your energy back from wherever it wandered that day. Another thing I would say, the third thing is taking a shower where you're using some type of salt. So that could be like a sea salt scrub, or literally just washing your hands, as healthcare professionals are doing all day, washing their hands, right? But this actually adding a salt scrub to the process, and again saying something like, I release all energy that is not mine. I release it, I let it go down the drain and go where it needs to go to be mulched into the earth. This is not mine to hold on to.
That's a great thing to do. I could
Yeah,
think
it
about,
feels really good.
yeah, I could think about 5 times yesterday. I probably should have done that.
Right?
So, what caused you to gravitate towards crystals, um,
No.
to work with the energetic hygiene?
Sure. Well, there was a crystal journey was part of the big journey. So all of this really started happening for me about 20 years ago, when I don't know if you have any astrology fans out there, but I was going through my Saturn return, which happens to everyone in their late 20s. And I was feeling very lost. I was unhappy in my career. I was unhappy in my relationship. I didn't know up from down. And that's something that happens to people in their late 20s. And it can be astrologically tracked, down to the day of when it will happen and down to the day of when it will stop. And, the idea is it's not a punishment. It's just kind of like a personal growth fire that you're walking through to get to the other side and become a better version of yourself. And for me, when I was in that moment in my life, crystals showed up, and I had that teacher come in, and it was really interesting because I walked into her place of business, and she's like, why are you here? And truthfully, someone that was into all this stuff, the only person I knew, sent me in there. And I was like, well, what do I have to lose at this point? Like, my life feels very effed right now. So what do I have to lose? And she told me, well, all crystals carry energy. And I said, okay. She said, so just go ahead and pick the crystals that you gravitate towards. And I picked 3 different crystal necklaces, because you have to remember, I worked in fashion at the time. So of course I picked jewelry, right? That's just where my eye went. I love jewelry. It wasn't, pieces that you'd like, put on your mantle or on your desk. It was wearable pieces. So I picked this stuff out, and she proceeds to start to give me a reading off of the crystals that I chose. And of course, I looked at her and I said, how did you know that? You're completely correct. And she said, well, the crystals you picked, of course. Okay. So I immediately bought the crystals and I was like, okay, let's just try this on. And she said a couple things were going to happen. And of course, those things happened. And I end up back in the crystal store 2 weeks later with her and never left. So she was a huge, huge teacher in my life. And the thing was, I started to learn the properties of the crystals. And then when I would be on set with magazines, and let's say Cartier came to set and brought jewelry, I would start to kind of flex my intuitive muscle with the models on set. And I remember it very clearly. Cartier was on our set one day, and the model says, oh, wow, I really want to wear that ring right there. And it was a particular ring, and I couldn't help myself. I looked at her and I said, oh, are you feeling low energy and something's like going on with your gut right now? And of course, she looks at me and I looked at her and she's like, how did you know that? And I hear my teacher echoed in my voice saying, well, the crystals you picked, obviously. And so, yeah. And so, what's interesting about the energetic hygiene portion of how does that work with crystals is that there are certain crystals that are great for keeping bad vibes and energy vampires away from us. There are crystals that work like almost like energetic air purifiers in the home. So there's the fun thing is there's a crystal for everything, and there's crystals that you can use to help improve your energetic hygiene.
That's very interesting. So how do you work with practitioners and health coaches with crystals? And you said tarot cards too, right?
Yeah, I do. Um, so it was really interesting in my career. Something that I would have to do for work in fashion a lot was some type of like trend board or idea board for the coming season or the shoot that was happening. And right, we have trend boards that are um, they're telling us a story about something that's coming, right? And you're seeing magazine tears and little trinkets or something that might be on the board. And it was interesting that when I got into what I do now, I really felt it's like I left, but I never left because I use tarot cards. And I have thousands of them in my office to choose from. And I pick the right ones for my clients and I pick the right crystals and I lay those out on the table before our session. And I'm, creating visual narratives of somebody's past, present, and future, and whatever I see around that based on what crystals symbolize, what I see in the tarot cards, and also what my intuition is telling me. And I'm able to work or consult with the energy of what is going on in a health practitioner's life or what's coming. And it's been a really wild experience because I do see a lot of people in fashion, beauty, and entertainment because that's where I come from. But it's been interesting on this journey that I've seen a lot of Western medicine people start to come and see me, which is, really exciting and refreshing because they're getting excited to hear more about what energy is, how they use it, how it can help protect them, how it can help move things within their clients. Um, so I get very excited to work with them in that capacity. And it might be anything when I'm working with, say, health coaches, um, and other health practitioners, they may be worried about their own energy, right? Because they love what they do, but they feel drained at work. Like I hear that over and over and over. How can I protect myself? Or it's health coaches that are getting curious in what I do, and they want to start to actually learn what I do and incorporate that into their coaching practice.
What happened to launch you into the world of energetics?
That's the crazy story. So um again, as I mentioned, I was in my Saturn return in my late 20s. I lived in Brooklyn. And the original thing that happened was I walked into the bodega across the street from my house to get a sandwich in the middle of the night. I was working on a trend presentation for a fashion client. And I ordered my sandwich. I went up to the front. Nobody's in the bodega. It's the middle of the night. And I heard a man's voice say there's going to be a fight about bananas and he will be 32 cents short. And I spun around and nobody was there. And I was just like, whatever, it's someone in the back. And I am up at the counter now with my sandwich and a man comes through the front door and there was like fruit outside. And he comes in with bananas and pushes me out of the way and slams the bananas down on the counter. And him and the clerk start to get in a fight. And the man is 32 cents short on the purchase of the bananas. And I was like, that's okay. You're tired. Go to bed. And, later that week, I got woken up in the middle of the night and I watched a ghost walk through my apartment walls into my neighbor's house. And then, just for fun, I started to get on the subway, as all New Yorkers are commuting on the subway. And if it wasn't all enough of a wild experience to be in the New York City subway, I started having strangers come up to me telling me they had a message for me, that I was a healer and that my whole life was about to change. And I obviously ran away from those people quickly. So that's happening. So I was like, great. I'm unhappy with my career, my relationship, and now I'm crazy. Good for me. So I had no idea what to do. I had no idea where to turn. We don't, this is 20 years ago. We don't have social media. We don't have hashtag healers on Instagram. There's not these online schools. Like none of this exists, right? And I also, I think it's worth mentioning that I come from a strict Irish Catholic Midwest upbringing. So I didn't really feel like this was something I could take home to my family to talk about. And I would say probably like for the first time in my life, I prayed, right? I was like, whatever's out there, could you just like point me somewhere? Because this is really scaring me. And um, I was at a client's office, and a girl I knew from the PR department came up to me and she said, "Hey, do you believe in psychics?" And I was like, I don't know. I don't have an opinion on the subject. And she said, and she kept talking about this person. She said, I really think you need to go see this person. And I said, well, who is that? And she said, well, he's a psychic. I just think you need to see him. So now the only thing I think in my mind is like, I have said nothing to anybody. This girl knows something's wrong with me. And I thought, well, you know, I either maybe go see the psychic first, or like the next stop is where the mental institution. So I decided to go see the psychic, because I also kept thinking about the other piece of that, and it just like didn't sit in my stomach that that was like the right choice, because I was still a very like functioning member of society. So that just didn't seem like the right fit for this occasion. So I make an appointment with said psychic. And again, you could hide back then, like there's no social media, like he couldn't find me online. I wouldn't tell him my last name. I wouldn't give him my email. I called him on the phone and came to his office in Midtown Manhattan. And he opens the door and looks at me and says, "Oh, you're not crazy. You're psychic." And I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah." And he says, "Are these things happening?" Right? And goes over what was happening to me. And I said, "Yes, yes, that is happening." And he said, "Yeah, we're going to have a long talk. Come in my office." So he proceeds to tell me, give me a lot of guidance. Um, Also told me a bunch of books I needed to read, and said, "You need to get a mentor." And of course, it was like, a mentor for what? Like, what is this? I can't name whatever this is. And he also told me, eventually, he said, "You're going to leave fashion, leave New York City, and move to California." And I said, "Over my dead body." Well, I did leave fashion. I did leave New York, and I do live in Los Angeles. So let's just say he was right on the money. So I thought, okay, where do I get a mentor for whatever this is? And for some reason, my gut told me that I should go out and see a friend of mine that lived in the Hamptons, because she was like the only person I knew at the time that like she had mentioned, auras, spirit guides. She was juicing before everybody. She had a qigong master she worked with. She was just talking about energetic things, and my heart told me she was the safe place to land this information. So I went out to see her and ended up crying on her living room couch. And her response to me was, "Oh, you finally figured it out." I figured out what? And she said, "You're a healer and you need a mentor." And I was like, okay, this is the second time I've heard this week. A mentor for what? And she said, "Well, I feel like your whole life's about to change." I said, "Yeah, I've been hearing that around lately. Thanks so much." Um, And she said, there's this woman I want you to work with, and she's going to help you. I know she's going to help you. And I said, okay, great. What's that all about? And she said, well, it's this lady that lives out in San Francisco. And I was like, I can't go to San Francisco. And she said, don't worry, you don't need to. You can work with her over the phone. And I said, well, work doing what? And she says, you're going to do energy work, and she's going to come through the phone and heal you. And I was like, okay, I have heard everything now. But I was also feeling, again, so horrible, that I was like, I'm willing to try anything to like try and make my life right now. And not only right, but feel myself again. So I made an appointment with a lady in San Francisco, and I was told to put my headphones in, lay on the floor of the bed, get comfortable, and just listen to what she had to say. And I was like, okay, I can do that. So we get on the phone, and I'm laying on the floor, and all of a sudden I felt my pelvis convulse like someone had put a defibrillator on it. And I didn't say anything. My eyes were wide and I'm staring at the ceiling. And she said to me, that's better. I had to readjust your hips before we started working together.
Whoa.
Oh my God. And I said, well, she did come through the phone. And then I'm thinking, can she see me? And I didn't know what was going on, but after I got off the phone with her, I felt better. And I kept going back to her, and I worked with her once a week for 3 years. And at the beginning of our work together, she was really helping me understand what this was. And then I would say she stopped doing healings on me and started teaching me, and eventually says to me, um, you're going to do what I do. And I was like, oh, no, I'm not. I am just doing this to make all this go away, really. And so that I can be healthy and happy and get back to my fashion career and like put this behind me. Well, that's obviously not what happened. And gets weirder. She says to me, one time I was in Joshua Tree at a photo shoot. And remember, I lived in Brooklyn and she's in San Francisco, and she had no idea I was traveling. And I was taking our weekly appointment in the producer's house for the show. And um, she says to me, I really need you to go to school. I can only take you so far just one-on-one. Like, you need to learn in a group setting, and all this stuff is coming, right? And I'm like, no, forget it. And she said, okay. And this woman is like this, the sweetest, kindest angel. And she said, well, you know what? You're right down the street from the school I want you to go to. You could at least check it out. And she hung up the phone on me. And the place she wanted me to go was called the Four Winds School of Energy Medicine. And I looked it up, and it was 11 miles down the street from where I was staying. And I thought, oh, okay. Well, that was a pretty loud message from the universe. I don't understand this, but I guess I have to go to energy medicine school now. And so I did that as a 3-year program. And while all of this is happening, I'm still studying crystals. I ended up becoming a Reiki master. Dove into a bunch of other healing modalities, folk medicines from different cultures, and kind of popped out on the other side, knowing like it was loud that I had to leave fashion. And so I, again, took a hard left turn and broke up with my boyfriend, gave away my stuff, let go of my rent controlled apartment in New York. And moved to California and started my business.
So are you able to adjust people's hips over the telephone now?
So this is okay. So this is really interesting. I went, as I was telling you, to the Four Winds School of Energy Medicine, and it's a hands-on healing focused school. And one thing, I'm very good at that work. one thing I learned from being there is I don't like doing it. I don't like touching people. And something that I was really thriving at is divination or oracular work, where you are taking things, more modern day, right? It's like cards and crystals, or, if you were in ancient times, 5,000 years ago, you'd be using um, piles of leaves, cloud patterns, dirt, uh, water ripples, anything like that to divinate or read for somebody else. So where I'm really strong is sitting in more of a conversational setting, giving advice, and that's how I really think my healership shines through. So I don't really do that work because I just don't enjoy it.
Okay, that makes sense. So you have an offer for people who are listening today, and I think that we have, see, it's called Cosmic Mail. Is that right? Okay, and then you also have a book out, right?
I do, yes, Crystal RX.
And is
Yes.
that the way to get it?
So Crystal RX is sold through all major book distributors and of course on Amazon. So anywhere books are sold, you'll find my book.
Okay,
And it's a great book for beginners. I wrote it intentionally in that way that it's teaching you the top 25 crystals that you should have in your arsenal. It's telling you how to clear crystals, clean crystals, where to put them in your home, what they do, how to make gem water, anything that you could possibly want to do if you are crystal curious and to see if this is for you is in that book.
great. Cool. Okay. Thank you so much for being here with me and sharing your story. It was very interesting. Can't
It's
imagine
my pleasure, Cathy.
Thank you. Have a good
Okay.
week. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye now.